Hello and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we'll be looking at various angles on the papers this morning, ranging from politics, crime, security, and many other stories on the paper. Many among the stories is that of the NLC, which are having a meeting today. So hopefully they are telling Nigerians to sit tight, brace up. They might actually go on indefinite strike. So however the meeting turned out today will tell which direction they will be taking as a union or organization. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham, and I will be doing this together with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can follow us live there. Drop any of your comments on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And we'll go straight into the paper. I will be starting with the Voice of Liberty. And the big story here says, plan indefinite strike, expert total impact, NLC tells Nigerians. We have the Labour Congress have told Nigerians to expect a total impact when it finally declares its proposed strike. You can find that story inside the paper. Other story on the Voice of Liberty, Supreme Court fire incident didn't affect presidential election petition materials. You can find more of that story inside, and this is coming from the spokesman. Dangote denies reducing cement price from 5,500 to 2,700 naira. You can do well to find more detail of what he have to say about the present price of cement. Also, we have diphtheria spreads to 18 states, kill 453, infect 7,202, and I think this is really an emergency that the Ministry of Health, together in collaboration with other commissioners and health workers, have to put their hands together to stop this from spreading further. Other stories still on the Voice of Liberty, protests over economic hardship in Ghana enters the fourth day. You can find more of that international story in the paper as well. Another issue of insecurity is Zamfara governor accuses federal government agency of negotiating with terrorists. You want to know more about that? Do well to find more inside the paper. Home and abroad, Tinubu, Nigeria is taking its rightful place, coming from the minister, Mohammed Idris. You can find more of the story in the paper. And that is all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Nigerian News Direct, impeachment embattled Ondo Deputy Governor drags Akeredolu Ondo Assembly and the CG to court. You can find more details on page 2. Diphtheria spreads to 18 states as cases hit 7,202, and we have 453 deaths recorded so far. You can find more details on page 3. Tinubu has not reintroduced fuel subsidy, a statement coming from APC as there's speculation that there is still fuel subsidy, but then we are seeing APC coming out saying that the president haven't done such. You can find more details on page 3. The big story on Nigerian News Direct, NCDMB, NNPC, IOC signed Memorandum of Understanding to ramp up oil production. Target 6-month contract cycle as active oil rigs hit 31 in 2023 from 10 in 2022. Regulatory uncertainty drags upstream expenditure by 77.8% in 8 years, a report coming from NUPRC. You can find more details on page 16. Still on Nigerian News Direct, customer deposit in Access Holdings grow to 12.5 trillion naira in the first half as earnings soared to 940.3 billion naira. More details can be found on page 14. Customs intercepts bomb-making materials in Edo State. Tribunal upholds Sanwo-Olu's victory, says Jandor PDP's petition dead on arrival. Another downside of the paper, Labour strike minister appeals to NLC to shelve strike, secure release of detained NURTW members. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Metrics newspaper, suspicion trace Supreme Court fire incident, where you can find some writers saying PDP group says the fire outbreak suspicious, urge justice to remain on pre-Tubet. Presidential election materials unaffected. Apex Court is saying that, so the issue of the fire incident, you can do well to read more of that story on page 2. Also, we have Senate screen new CBN governor and deputies on Tuesday. Other story on the front page of the Metric newspaper, we have Nigerians will soon know what happened in CBN. This is coming from the federal government. Fuel scarcity looms as forex shortage halts importation. Tribunal affirms Sanwo-Olu's election as Lagos governor, with detail found on page 8. How Obi resisted pressure to lead mass protests against election results. This is a report coming from the Labour Party itself. And also we've seen Mohbad was brought in dead. This is a report coming from the Lagos hospital revealing. We will record that an autopsy was taken last week. So here we're seeing the hospital is saying that he was brought in dead. So you can do well to find more detail of that story. We have few picture stories on the front page of the paper. So you can do well, grab the paper and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Guardian newspaper, Cardoso faces Senate under FX pressure and loss of confidence. And we have Cardoso has to deal with spiking inflation, volatile exchange rate. We have $6.8 billion backlog, and we have contentious 22.7 trillion naira ways and means advances. We have ambiguous external reserves, falling bank adequacy ratio, and high interest rate. You can find the details of what the new CBN governor is about to face on page 6. Nigeria to reduce oil sector's contracting cycle to 6 months, although deputy governor approaches court to stop impeachment. Nigeria records 7,202 diphtheria cases, 453 deaths. Labour to declare indefinite strike, mobilizes state council for showdown. Court dismisses PDP Labour's petition against Sanwo-Olu in Hamzat. You can find more details on page 7. East-West road still abandoned, hellish 17 years on. You can find more details on page 4, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, starting with the big story on the Daily Times, we have that of the unfavorable PEPC judgment. PDP, Labour Party smell a rat in Supreme Court fire. We're having this story making it around on most of our paper, and of course it is expected that this will I say PDP and Labour Party feel that way. We will record that they have appealed to the Supreme Court because they were not comfortable, or rather they felt the judgment of the appeal court did not sit well with them. So they have sought for an appeal to the Supreme Court, which was granted to them. And right now, with the fire incident happening there, of course, we definitely will hear the PDP and the Labour Party saying the fact that they do not trust the fire incident. Definitely they should check what really sparked up that fire. I remember there was a time we had a fire in the office of the Accountant General of the Federation, and then initially they said nothing was actually destroyed, but eventually after so much we heard that so many papers were missing, so many documents were missing and all of that, and questions Nigeria asked was the fact that didn't you have all of this things saved in the cloud or something? Why are we having them raw materials and all of papers or left, right and center, and then you're saying that some things have been lost? It's either somebody's trying to cover up his track for mischievousness or anything. And no wonder we're saying that PDP and Labour Party are also expressing the same fear, because they believe that possibilities are some people who are suspicious of some mischievous activities are the people behind this. But I believe that the federal government, the agency, whoever is involved, will do the right thing by checking what was the cause of the fire. Is it a human error? Is it something that can be neglected? Is it something that needs to be probed further? Because some of these things might look very little, but then they have some hidden messages in it. So we hope that the government will do all that it will take them to probe what caused the fire, and then so we don't have a reputation of any sensitive place. Like the court, for instance, this is not something we're supposed to be hearing. So I believe that the government will do the right thing by probing what was the cause of the fire, and then we don't have a repeat of this happening again.
Of course, even if not for the election petition, there are other people too with very vital and sensitive files in the Supreme Court that of course wouldn't want to hear that it's been tampered with. But then the spokesman have said that no election material have been tampered with. The fire didn't get to that area. However, there should be an investigation, because such places shouldn't even have something like that happening in the first place, because whether we like it or not, we would have no option but for people to think that perhaps someone is trying to do something fishy in the court, or just as they said, they're smelling a rat in the Supreme Court. It's only expected for people to think like that, and we just hope that we won't hear a different story later. So we'll just wait and just hope that we truly have a transparent system, Sele, that certain things won't just happen when we're at the peak of sensitive things and you start hearing fire here, there. We've had such incidents even before election where we would have INEC offices
being burned
yes,
down
exactly, and sensitive materials. We had people deliberately trying to slow down the process of election, or trying to make sure that people whose PVCs are in this place will not be able, so automatically you're reducing the numbers of voters that will be able to go out and out of that. So we keep seeing this kind of sabotage in our system, and I'm looking for where we will grow above such. And truly, when there is an investigation, let the truth be out there, and it shouldn't repeat itself again.
Of course. Well, let's look at other stories still on the Daily Times newspaper, where we have CBN Special Investigator report ready soon, coming from the federal government. Also, we have Mbato Ondo Deputy Governor heads to court to stop impeachment. U.S. expect peaceful Bayelsa Guba polls. You can find more of that story on page 2 as well. NBA berate LG chair over omission in palliative committee. You can find that on page 5. NBA berate local government chair over omission in palliative committee. You can find that in page 5. Flyover bridge on Enugu Port Harcourt Expressway caves in. More of that story can be found on the front page and inside the paper. Confirmation of Tinubu's latest nominees take front burner as Senate resumes today, with detail found on page 5. We have a picture story here showing the flyover bridge yesterday that collapsed, so you can do well to grab the paper and read closely any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, the big story, twist in Akeredulo's deputy feud. The writer under the story, Assembly Speaker raises alarm over threat to life, says sacrifice placed near his lodge. Deputy Governor heads to court, seeks injunction against removal by Assembly. We have served Deputy Governor removal notice. Coming from the Assembly, Assembly orders Chief Judge to constitute panel to investigate Ayedatiwa. You can find more details on page 16. And at the top of the paper, still on diphtheria spreading across Nigeria, we're having it now in over 105 local government areas in 18 states, and so far we have recorded 453 deaths of children. You can find more details on page 4. Federal government Zamfara governor trade wars over negotiation with bandits. Varsity confirms rescue of 13 students and 3 others. Police arrest impeach Ogun legal and local government boss Adedayo. You can find more details on page 29. Still on Nigerian Tribune, Fire God section of Supreme Court, PDP demands investigation. Police confirms arrest of 19 suspected cultists in Ogun State. Tribunal upholds Sanwo-Olu's victory, dismisses PDP and Labour Party's petition. You can find more details on page 15. We are still seeing the picture of the bridge that collapsed on Enugu-Port Harcourt Expressway. And that's all news on Nigerian Tribune.
Richard, I wonder what is the need for the trade of what between the federal government and Zamfara government. We saw one of the paper capture it as the fact that the government of Zamfara is actually accusing the government of actually having something to do with terrorists. And I remember there was a time where we had someone, one of the former governors of the northern part of the country, one of the northern states, saying the fact that now we should have negotiation with bandits. And I remember quite a number of stakeholders came out to actually, add their voice to the fact that what do we have to negotiate with bandits? I mean, over and over and over, the government have tried during various administrations to see how we can give amnesty or actually give rehabilitation to some of these people that have said they have repented and they are ready to come back into the society. And this take my mind back to what happened during the civil war that we had during General Yakubu Gowon back then, where we had the civil war then in 1967 down to 1970. And we remember clearly that was when he came up with the policy of the 3 R's, where we had reconciliation, reconnection, rehabilitation. Now, why am I taking us back time memorial? Because it is important. He felt that at that time, we're not even talking about terrorists. He just felt that, okay, yeah, the people of the South is actually feeling left out. They feel being marginalized and all of this. So what can we do to bring them back into the society? But this is not the case right now in relation to these bandits. I do not know what we have, and the way things are moving, you know, Nigerians will be tempted to think that this is beyond just terrorists. Possibilities that maybe there's something somewhere, or they are fighting something that the government is aware of, but Nigerians are not aware of. So I believe that it is imperative that we come out in clear terms and let us know what really is the problem. Our security agency not capable. Already we're seeing here that some of the people who have been kidnapped, the ladies that were kidnapped, we see right now the number has increased. Yesterday we had 6. Right now we're seeing that 13 students and 3 others have been freed. So I'm happy that their numbers are increasing. But beyond that, what happens when we have a reputation again of another kidnap? Because believe you me, these people are not tired in any way. This bandit are actually somewhere planning on their next attack. So I think rather than, you know, a state and the federal government having back-to-back on words, I think this is the time that we need to come together and see what can we do to rectify this, because it's becoming will I say, worrisome as it is right now. Nigerians are getting tired of a reputation. If it's not Zamfara today, tomorrow we'll hear there's another northeast or another northwest, or even the south. Who knows? Only God knows how organized these people are. So we hope and we believe that beyond all of this trade of words, because when there's a little space, this is when this body will take advantage of the chaos and then stage another attack again, when Nigerians or when the government is not prepared. So I'm hoping that they put aside whatever personal grudge they have and let us face this squarely, because we have a common enemy here and we have to do something before it takes us more time than we're expecting it to take us.
Sele, is kidnapping organized? Yes, it is. But is it a network? It's not. So why are you not treating it for what it is? This is just crime taking a new face. Are you going to negotiate with armed robbers? Because these are who they are. This time around, they are not taking money from these people, but they're using them as a means of exchange for money to demand what they need to get. So we're no longer having the kind of highway robbery we used to have in the past, where they stop people on the road and take their money from them because probably people travel differently now. Now we're having them taking these people and knowing very well that they will be exchanged for money. So then why are we trying to negotiate with them? Because when you put yourself in the position of negotiating, you put them in a position that this is a network. You put them in a position that is some kind of syndicate that is rooted way beyond what we are seeing. Except, as you said, Sele, if the government, the federal government knows something, or the state government, wherever it's happening, the government of Nigeria knows something that the common man in this country don't know, except if it's a network we do not know about. But then for these kidnappers, we see that they operate differently in different states, but then it's the same way. And just as you said, when we have other groups of terrorists coming out, we know that these people, not only are they organized, but it's a network, because they are trying to achieve something within a place. But what are these people doing? They don't have goals. They haven't come out to state things like that. So you don't put them in a position for negotiation. You treat them for what they are, and that these are people just creating menace in the community. These are criminals using people to get money from people, and then you treat them as it is. But the more the government keeps seeing negotiation as a way, what are you negotiating? What are you? That is the question. What are you negotiating with these people? But then, of course, when it comes to the way things are being, the way the system of this country is, there are a lot of things that, of course, the common man doesn't know. And I want to believe that this is one of those things. And we will just wait and see how things keep unfolding concerning banditry and then kidnapping in the country, because except if there is more to it than just people taking people for ransom and all of that, but then there's no room for negotiation, because when you put that kind of importance on these people, you just then turn them to a network that eventually they will grow. It's now you giving them the room to become what they weren't in the first place. So
You
I
know,
just
Richard,
hope,
if you ask the common man, if you just go to the street and ask anybody, a common man, the question, the fact that if they feel this group is a network, they will tell you they feel it's a network. If not, how then do you explain the machineries they use? How then do you explain the money they have? How then do you explain that they even have infrastructures, they even have basic amenities that they need? You have water, they have light. How then do we get to explain all of these things if these people are not working with some well-known wired people somewhere?
of course,
No wonder we had when the UAE gave us the list of the people who are financing this. Until date, Rachel, have you heard anything about that anymore? It seems as if the case is pushed to the side. I do not want to believe that it has been pushed to the side, but that is what the body language we're getting. It looks as if this case is being pushed to the side, and that is why I keep saying. I remember in 2021, when we didn't declare as a third worst country to live in. Why? Because of the issue of violence, terrorists, different bodies coming out, one group after another. Either we're having ISWAP or we're having Boko Haram or having headers, even though I believe it's one and the same, just changing names. But then I believe that the government have all that it takes if we truly want to fight the issue of insecurity in this country, because we cannot be going over there to the UAGA and be saying that we are ready, people should come and invest in our country, we're ready, it's either you come or if you don't want to come, telling Nigerians living in diaspora to come back to the country. But we are yet to do the basic thing, which is to make sure that lives and property are secure. I keep repeating it and I will keep saying it again, which is the fact that once a government fail in that area, I'm sorry to say this, but you have failed as a government, whether in the state level, local government, or even in the federal level. So there should not be a time where we'll have the state government and the federal government not coming to an agreement. I mean, I'm expecting more synergy coming from both the state and the federal government, seeing the fact that we have a common enemy here. What can we do? Because it seems these people are doing something. But I hope, and I'm just hoping, that the government is working towards all of these things we're saying. That it's not just all about people coming out every day to say, we're doing it, just like you rightly pointed, Richard, the fact that they are using human beings to actually trade for money, but it's one and the same thing. So I hope that they will actually wake up to the fact that this is not something we are encouraging, or except if we are encouraging to keep financing terrorism, which I don't believe it's a sector that needs attention in Nigeria. It's not even a sector in the first place. So we hope that we'll do the right thing. Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Nation newspaper. Tribunal wins victory for all, Sanwo-Olu tell Lagosians. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. 98 Court of Appeal panel sitting on 1,209 post petitions. Access Holding posts 940.3 billion naira gross earning in the first half of the year. Also, we have Obi distance self from violent calls. Major bridge collapse in Enugu, which we've seen most of, some of the papers taking the picture story of that. Also, we have probe report will expose rot in CBN, says the federal government. Also, we have dams disaster 16 charged to court. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Nigel Juta OK's French withdrawal. You can find more of that issue inside. Mali Juta chief election. You can find that on page 30. Government entice workers with wage reward to stop strike. Lalong give us time. And also we have NLC NEC meets to decide, which their meeting is supposed to hold today. So you can do well to follow closely what the outcome of that meeting will be. Also, we have tomorrow is Eid Maruz holiday. That's for those who will be observing it. They will give them the holiday tomorrow. And we have the few pictures through here where we can see the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria in solidarity with Road Transport Employers Association of Nigeria. So you can do well to grab the paper and see what the solidarity work is all about and how it can be addressed.
On the Punch newspaper, Labour accuses federal government of delay. NLC ESCO meets today. Vandals destroy 108 transmission towers. Federal government alleges sabotage. Senate screens CBN Governor Cardoso deputies today. The big story on the Punch newspaper: Tinubu reviews document as CBN investigator submits interim report. Nigerians will know what really went wrong and what brought us down, coming from the SGF. CBN special investigator continues audit. Federal government links nation's woe to bad governance. More details can be found on page 2. We have a picture story showing NYG athletes lament poor conditions and maltreatment. You can find more details on page 31. And at the downside of the Punch newspaper, Jandor kicks as tribunal dismisses PDP Labour Party's petitions against Sanwo-Olu. Police arrest suspected Sagamu cult leader and 18 others. On impeachment, Aiyedatiwa sues Ondo Assembly Speaker alleges threat to life. More details can be found on page 29, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
And on Daily Sun newspaper, we have federal government begs for more time as Labour meet to decide on indefinite strike. Nothing can be done until Tinubu is back, coming from the Minister of Labour and Employment, Lalong. You can find more of that story on page 8. Tinubu moves to stop Chicago University, wants institution not to release detail on gender, transcript and other academic records, but only certificate. You can find more of that on page 6. Seeking investors abroad, waste of time, coming from Obi, and the LP saying taking back Nigeria will come without violence. You can find more of that on page 27 and 28. No cause for alarm over fire incident, coming from the Supreme Court. We suspect foul play, coming from the PDP. INEC to conduct mock accreditation for voters in Bayelsa, Imo, Kogi, October 11. So for those in that state, please take note. That will happen on October 11. You can find more detail of that on page 27. Tension in Benue as gunmen abduct commissioner, ex-LGA chairman. Acts barbaric, condemnable, unacceptable, coming from the governor. Nose throat infection kill 453 in 9 months. Urgent vaccination effort underway. Suspected cases hit 11,000. You can find more of that on page 26. Tribunal dismisses Jador petition, affirms Sanwo-Olu election. More inside the paper. Ex-Kano Emir Sanusi hit PDP. I take that story. Ex-Kano Emir Sanusi hit the APC hard. Says government under ruling party has set Nigeria 40 years backward. You can find more of what he has to say on page 6. Abducted 13 Zamfara students, 3 others regained freedom. More detail of that story can be found on page 4. We have the picture story here. You can do well to grab the paper and see what the picture story is all about, and many other stories that are of interest to you. But before we move to the next paper, Rachel, let's take a break. We hope to hear what your contributions are concerning any of the story. What do you feel about Peter Obi? What do you feel about the ex-emir of Kano also saying the fact that the APC government have taken Nigeria 40 years backward? And also we're seeing that NLC is hoping to have a meeting today, so that will tell the line they will be taking, whether they will head on that indefinite strike or not, even though the Minister of Labour and Employment is saying that he is waiting for the president to get into the country before anything can be done. So quite a number of stories on the paper. We'd love to hear what your own inputs are when we come back from the break. Please stay tuned with us. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program is the Dailies, and we've been looking at various stories on the paper, from looking at the outcome of the tribunal yesterday in Lagos State, where we have Sanwo-Olu has been affirmed as the governor of the state. Also, we have the issue of the fire incident that actually got a part of the Supreme Court, even though they came out to say nothing was actually being affected, especially in regards to some sensitive documents there, and quite a number of stories from the indefinite strike Labour is hoping to embark on. So we would love to hear what your own contribution is concerning the story. The number is displayed on your screen. Do well to call us. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set. Try to summarize your point in a minute and try to be civil without using any coarse language or anything that is offensive on air. Thank you so much. And I still have Rachel with me. Rachel, thank you.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper before the calls come in.
On First News, Supreme Court fired didn't affect election petition documents, a statement coming from a spokesman. We have the big story saying my predecessor Ishaku emptied treasury before handing over. This is coming from the present Taraba governor, says I met nothing in state treasury to start governance. And concerning the infernal Supreme Court building Abuja on fire on Monday morning, Mali junta postpones presidential election. Supreme Court inferno suspicious, says PDP demands full-scale investigation as police launch probe. And on the strike, I've met one of your demands. Lalong asks NLC not to cripple economy. Obi resisted pressure to lead mass protests against presidential election, a statement coming from Labour Party. Tribunal affirms Sanwo-Olu's election, dismisses Labour Party and PDP's petition. Still on First News newspaper, INEC to conduct mock accreditation in Kogi, Imo and Bayelsa. Police arrest Ogun ex-council chair who accused Abiodun of diverting local government funds. Netizens knock Pastor Bakare over comment on Mohbad's death. I've never accepted bribe in my career, says Force PRO. And at the downside of the paper, troops rescue some abducted Zamfara varsity students. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, starting with the big story, insecurity. Zamfara governor alleges federal government in secret talks with bandits. The writer following that story vows not to negotiate with bandits. Presidency keeps mum. 7 abducted Zamfara varsity students, 3 construction workers rescued by troops. Total number of students rescued now 13. So we are happy. We hope more will be rescued, and those who are in the den of these bandits can get to be reunited again with their loved ones. UBA partners with the AFCFTA to roll out $6 billion financing solutions across Africa. And federal government to Nigerians, be patient with us on tough economic reforms. More of that can be found on page 9. Leadership, insecurity, poverty and others stalling Nigeria development, coming from the Ariwa Consultative Forum. You can find more of that on page 14. NNPP slam Kanu Tribunal over bandits and terrorists claim. More of that can be found on page 14. Tinubu has not reintroduced fuel subsidy. This is a report coming from the APC. Fire God's Supreme Court chamber destroy files and computers. Well, we're saying, even though it said nothing concerning the tribunal was affected, but some, some files and computer were actually being destroyed. So you can find more detail of that on page 8. And on the issue of the strike, federal government will soon conclude which award to workers. This is still coming from Lalong. You can find that on page 25. We have over 39,526 pending cases, says Supreme Court President. You can find more of that on page 25. And also on sport, on the 2023-2024 MPFL season to kick off September 30th, which is on Saturday. You can do well to find more detail of that story inside the paper. We have a picture story here where we can see Edo and others at the LSE bell ringing ceremony. You can find more of any other story that is of interest to you inside the paper.
On Leadership newspaper, anxiety as Labour meets on indefinite strike today. Tribunal affirms Sanwo-Olu as Lagos governor, and we have trending Supreme Court fire not linked to election appeal, and we have on numbers concrete roads with push price of cement to 9,000 naira. You can find both details on page 2. And on forex scarcity, NNPC sustains petrol supply with oil swap. Nigeria records 453 deaths, 11,587 suspected diphtheria cases. More details can be found on page 7. And it's also important to note that this mostly affects children. So for parents out there, please find the details of these cases on page 7 of the Leadership newspaper. Presidency mom over Tinubu's return after UNGA. You can find more details on page 4. Appeal Court treats 1,209 petitions from 2023 elections. No world leader invited for 63rd independence. A statement coming from the federal government as they have assured us that October 1st will be low-key. You can find more details on page 8. And the big story on the paper as NAS resumes Akpabio Abba's move to pacify aggrieved lawmakers to swap committees, members intensify lobby, budget electoral art, economic constitution review top agenda, Senate screens new CBN governor and deputies today. More details can be found on page 4. And we have a picture story where we can see the Minister of the FCT and also the Chief Justice of Nigeria in Abuja yesterday, where they're launching or commissioning the Court of Appeal Training Center in Abuja yesterday. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
Rachel, I truly wonder why no world leader has been invited to celebrate our 63 years of being independent. We're independent but still dependent. That's what I believe, Rachel. And no wonder, I mean, what are we going, why will we even invite world leaders in the first place when we have quite a number of internal issues we need to tackle? No wonder, I mean, back was then when it's independent, I keep saying this, it was more like another Christmas day. People are excited, remembering that regardless of which religion you belong, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of what your belief is, it was all about one Nigeria. It was all about what we can, put together to make sure that our country is great again. But I'm sorry to say it, with the way things are happening, definitely it's now low-key because we've realized that there's more to celebration and that we need to concentrate inwardly and see what can we do to make our leaders that actually fought for this independence for us. I mean, it wasn't about whether it was you're a Hausa, you're Igbo, you're Yoruba, whatever. It wasn't about that. I mean, Salbafem Awolowo was down from the south, southwest, and then we're talking about the Fabale, we're talking about the north, but they put aside what they have to say that let's fight for this Nigeria. But then, somebody once said that maybe if they should take a look at the Nigeria they fought for, they will have said, okay, let's just leave them to the colonial leaders. But then I believe that that wasn't the best way. Are we saying that we have not gotten it right? Yes. Are we saying we can never get it right? No. I believe we can get it if only we put our priorities right. And I think that has been the issue over the years, that we are having misplacement of priority. We value other things more than other things, and no wonder we're seeing the way things are. No wonder we have IPOP saying they want to leave Nigeria, or Dudwa will say they want to leave Nigeria. We have Miati Allah and the rest of it will say they want to leave Nigeria. So when everybody leaves Nigeria, then there will be no longer Nigeria. So I'm hoping that beyond us not having leaders, we should reflect. It should be a sober moment for us as Nigerians. Let's reflect and see, what are we not getting right? How can we get it right? Where is the help? Like, do we need help from external bodies? I mean, people are willing to help us to get it right. We can learn from other countries that started from the scratch and they are great and giants where they are right now. It's not about using words and say we're giants of Africa by our numbers. No, but let's even use these numbers to our advantage, so that we can advance as a country. And then when you look at Nigeria, Rachel, you'll be proud to tell the story to your kids someday. This is the Nigeria we all wanted to stay back on, not the Nigeria that want to japa and live for other people. So we look forward to seeing all of that. If no world leader is coming, fine, but then let us reflect and see how we can fix this country to become the country and even better than it was back then.
Well, I just really hope that the low-key celebration is just to cut down the cost of governance in the country, because when we're thinking of world leaders coming in, we're thinking about more money to celebrate the 63rd independence of Nigeria. At the same time, Sele, I believe that it's not about the celebration. With or without the celebration, we are growing older, and with or without the celebration, Nigeria is reaching a new milestone. But it all matters to what the administration is planning to do in this new turn. I know that the Tinubu's administration so far have taken tough decisions, and they are still yet to take tougher decisions, and we're still waiting for them to do what it feels right to the citizens of this country. But for me, I keep saying I'm looking forward to what the president is going to address in his speech. And not only is he addressing those things, but then you are saying those things and then they are actively being put in place and all of that. And this is when I will know that it's not all about how we celebrate it, but all about the decisions we take, all about the plans we make, and all about the things that we implement, all the things that we get rolling and all of that. So that's what I'm looking forward to, this independence. And then I'm just hoping that is the same for every other Nigerian.
Of course, Rachel, we all hope for the same. Well, let's take a look at this day newspaper. On this day newspaper, we have coming from the APC, Shaibu traumatized by Atiku's serial electoral failure. The writer following that story said the ex-VP aide dares federal government to release details of petrol landing costs. You can start reading on the front page and continue on page 10. We have the NCDMB and NPC. The IOC signed memorandum of understanding to reduce contract cycles. You can find on page 5 as well. Don't embark on strike. Federal government appeals to the NLC. Detail of that can be found on page 6. Tinubu asked U.S. court to limit release of the CSU records to diploma certificate. Says other document must be precluded. You can find more of that on page 10. Senate to screen nominees for the CBN governor and deputies today. Ministerial nominees for October 3rd. You can find more of that on page 10. Also, we're still having the picture story here, the opening bell ringing ceremony at the London Stock Exchange. You can find more detail of it. And the last story on the paper says Sanwo-Olu floors Jadol at the tribunal. You can find that story on page 28, and that's all on this day newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, crisis hit Ekiti wins golf gold. We have Auburn gets 2-match ban. Dele Bashiru laughs last despite Onocha's heroics. We have I made to earn 10 million naira after UAE move. And we have Salah De Bruyne top Saudi 2024 targets list. And we have drunk driving at Desanya Rick's jail term. More details can be found on page 2. Oblak on United radar. No Chelsea plan to sack Pochettino. And we have Rice Trossard out of Brentford clash. You can find more details on page 5. The big story on the paper, a tale of two victors. We can see your Osimhen, and then you can find more details inside the paper. And at the downside of the paper, clubs get 200 million naira as NPFL begins September 30. Mbappe's injury not serious, coming from the coach club and from the club coach Enrique. You can find more details on page 3, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
All right, let's take a look at Teen Trust newspaper. WAEC to begin computer-based tests for WAS. You can find that on page 4. And also, we're having African Church Model College student wins the 2023 National Teen Think Essay competition, with detail of that story inside the paper. And we also have still on the issue of essay competition, 40-year-old student to receive 2 million naira scholarship. This is commendable and a way to encourage other people to do better. We have for our teenagers, you can also check on lifestyle, on career, well-being, and other short stories and how you can also create yours and be great in whatever way you want to be. And that's all on Teen Trust newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, 1 minute, starting with the big story we got 813 petitions from party primaries, 1,209 498 tribunal. This is coming from the appeal court at annual legal year. The writer under the story says appropriate living budget for judiciary. CGN tells NAS Fabemi caution on the threat to judges. Fire God Supreme Court. You can find all the details on page 5 and also on page 6. And at the top of the paper, INEC conducts mock accreditation in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi State. Federal government announces Loki's 63rd independence celebration, and we have diphtheria. Nigeria recorded 453 deaths, 7,202 cases, a report coming from the federal government. Gunmen abduct Benue Commissioner ex-Zaki Biam Council boss. You can find more details on page 8. Sanwo-Olu floors PDP at tribunal. Customs FOUC intercepts 1.6 billion naira hard drugs IED materials. And at the downside of the paper, we have Edo Ondo saga, renounce your Guba ambition or face the consequence, Abwaseki is telling Shaibu. Aiyedatiwa runs to court over planned impeachment and my life in danger, Ondo speaker cries out. You can find all the details on page 6, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
The Independent newspaper, Ondo deputy governor heads to court to hold the impeachment proceeding. Speaker raises the alarm over threat on his life. You can find detail of the story inside the paper. I inherited empty treasury from my predecessor, says Taraba governor. And on fuel subsidy crisis, which is the big story, NLC takes final decision on indefinite strike today. Again, Lalong begs the labor not to paralyze the economy, says the federal government has already resolved on one of their demands. You can find more of that on page 28. We have 39,526 pending cases. Appeal court president cries out. TUC protests takeover of Lagos Park proscription of the RTEAN. You can find that on page 7. Voice data service may be disrupted as states threaten shutdown of telcos base stations. Voice data services may be disrupted as states threaten shutdown of telcos base stations. You can find more of that on page 29. Why fire gutted Supreme Court building? This is coming from the spokesman. Says it didn't affect presidential election petition materials. You can find more of that on page 6. Tribunal affirms Sanwo-Olu re-election. Victory is for all, says Sanwo-Olu. And also we have the picture story here still showing us the protests of the TUC and also together with the Road Transport Employers Association. So you can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On New Telegraph, Bank's credit to economy rose to 87.27 trillion naira in August. A report coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 3. Oil, gas, Nigeria's capital expenditure falls by 74% to $6 billion. And on Guba polls, INEC holds mock accreditation in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi, October 14. You can find more details on page 5. Tribunal affirms Sanwo-Olu's victory. And on Aiyedatiwa case, we have Ondo Assembly directs CG to set up probe panel. The big story on the paper, custom intercepts 1.64 billion naira explosive device materials and others, seizes armored bullion van without end user certification, arrests 9 smugglers, poverty, insecurity, bad leadership, bane of Nigeria's development, coming from ACF chair. You can find more details on page 2 and 3. Power blackout can be cloud confidence in Tinubu's reforms. A statement coming from Moody. You can find more details on page 8. Senate screens nominees for CBN governor and deputies today. Lalong secure detained NURTW members released. Enugu Port Harcourt bridge collapses. You can find more details on page 7 and 30. Still on New Telegraph, federal government secretly negotiating with terrorists. Zamfara governor alleges varsity confirms rescue of 13 abducted students and 3 others. Senate calls for immediate rescue of victims. PDP cries foul as fire got section of Supreme Court judge's chamber. And at the downside of the paper, we have a study that says consuming aspartame could harm memory of offspring. You can find more details for pregnant women on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for
You're
your
welcome, Sarah.
insightful analysis. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you to the crew member and every other person that made this program a success. Until we come here again tomorrow, please do have a blessed day ahead.